Hello, Bill. Number 3.
It is number 3 today, Mark, and it's only 12 o'clock, and we've already got a full afternoon. Not with podcasts, but with some other work.
And some interesting guests we've had on this morning.
Yes,
which has been good.
As we know, everyone's got a story.
Yep.
We keep repeating ourselves all over again. But today, I think we've got a really, really interesting story.
Well, I have to admit, we have on our next podcast is Steve Parker. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, guys. Nice to meet you. Nice to be here.
Thank you. And as you do, we stalk on LinkedIn and other places. And Steve's now running Geelong Regional Olives, but started life as a systems engineer. So I want to know how you get from systems engineer into olives, but we'll deal with that as we get to it. So.
And Mark, the other night we attended a function in Geelong at the pier for the
Geelong Small Business Festival launch. Yep.
And Steve had a stand there promoting his product, which was very good. And I think that's the first time you've met him.
Yep.
And I've met Steve quite a while ago and was always impressed with this idea he had for olives and what he was doing, because he has a property where he has his own olive trees. Anyway, we'll get into that.
So, Steve, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
And question number 1 that we kick off all our podcasts with is, where did you go to primary school?
Oh, good God.
Oh, so you went to God school, did you?
Yeah, dear. I went to a school that doesn't exist anymore. It's now a housing estate, but it's called Bayview State in Holmes Glen, of all places, in Melbourne. So, but we moved around a fair bit as a family. Ended up down in Frankston and those sort of areas.
So where was high school from?
High school was the very first day of school. Was sitting on a hill watching the bulldozers bulldoze land for what was going to be the school.
Oh wow!
It was a brand new school called Barwon Park Tech, had a wonderful time there. But we were literally the first students through that school, and it was very much the old tech school approach.
Yep.
Which, Steve, we should see more of again.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think I've come out the better for that sort of an education. I can do things that some of my children now look at me and go, "Dad, how'd you learn how to do those things?"
Yeah. Well, you learn by doing, but also learn by learning. So that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you have any ambitions when you're in high school or what you wanted to do?
Not particularly. Dad was pretty much a driver for the direction I took. He believed, he was a labourer and a tradesman. He believed that further education would set me up much better. Didn't want me to go through what he'd been through. And so he pushed me towards the engineering field, and I decided to choose electrical and electronics engineering at what was Caulfield Institute of Technology, but now Monash. So, it wasn't until I got into the tertiary education that I started to feel as if I had a direction.
Interesting. And what was your first job? Did you have a job while you were at school or at TAFE?
Again, Mum and Dad sort of said I had to get out there and do some work as a early age as possible. I was probably about 14, working in a fruit shop.
14 and 3/4, I think it was, the real age.
Yeah. Well, I was working for a huge income. I made mega bucks. I think it was at 20 cents an hour.
What were you doing?
In a fruit shop assistant.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Lugging potato sacks.
Yep.
You think about that sort of pay nowadays.
and what was your first real job once you finished your study?
Finished my engineering degree. I went into process control for a company called Fisher & Porter that's since been taken over many times, and that was a US-based company with Australian operations, and they were into some pretty high-tech stuff in those days. And so I was able to learn about computer technology, real-time communications and things like that at a very young age, and they were all very embryonic in this country at that time. So that was a great experience. I was there for a few years. So, but the joke of it was I had all the shit jobs, and the reality was their business was making sewage treatment plants operate properly.
Okay.
So I ended up on some of those sites. I wouldn't say shoveling it, but making sure the computer didn't glitch.
Well,
Otherwise, I would have been.
They're sophisticated businesses now. I not long ago did a tour of Blackrock down near Torquay, Barwon Heads.
Yep.
And of course, now they're turning effluent into fertiliser and all sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that world has changed.
Yep. And I got an appreciation for all those sort of things that they were doing way back in the early 80s, and only now are we starting to really take advantage of that waste. It was just being dumped.
Yep.
And the retreated water too. The what do they call it? A and B class, I think, for memory.
Yeah. Class A, Class B, and C.
Yeah.
So.
That's right. And Steve, so you had a corporate life for a while. What tipped you out of the corporate life?
Post Y2K, I ended up in the IT telecommunications industry, working for a big multinational, looking after the telecommunications industry in this country, which is essentially Telstra.
Yep.
But after the Y2K thing, there was a bit of a dramatic slowdown in the IT spend. I got the opportunity to take a package. I was a bit exhausted by then, so I took a time out from that corporate career. And what happened was my wife at the time got pregnant, and she had a developing career in accounting. And the conversation was, well, who's going to give up work to look after our second child? I put my hand up and said, look, I'll do it. So I became a stay-at-home dad in 2002.
Very good.
And raised my boys for 20 years.
Oh, well done, Steve, because we have done a couple of interviews with Peter Murray, who was at one stage the Mayor of Geelong, and he's now running for council again. But he was also came out of the bank, went to the police force, ended up being a police prosecutor, and his wife was a partner in a very successful auto dealership. And Peter made exactly the same decision you made, and he was thrilled that he made that decision.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, it was the best decision best thing that's ever happened to me in my life, to be honest. The relationship, my boys are now grown adults, and the relationship I have with them is great, in my opinion. But the appreciation for what women have to go through raising children, most guys couldn't understand it unless they take the time out to do it themselves. It's a tough gig. I remember my wife coming home and saying, "Oh, what have you done today?" And you can't answer the question because you've done so many different things.
Yeah, correct.
Just what you said.
You talk about working the fruit shop. The pay as a stay-at-home parent doesn't pay much more than the fruit shop.
Yeah.
But it pays in abundance in other areas.
Yeah, absolutely. So
that's right.
Yeah, but so I moved out of the corporate world, 20 years in there, to spend 20 years as a stay-at-home dad. So, but that also is what I got an opportunity in the olive business.
Yeah.
So what kicked you into that? How did you?
Yeah, well, we had two young children, obviously, and we felt we wanted a lifestyle asset out of the city. We were in Melbourne. So we were looking at rural properties. Got the opportunity to look at an olive grove down here.
Down here is where?
In Motuari.
Yep.
And it was owned by our next door neighbour in Melbourne. And she, unfortunately, her husband passed away and couldn't continue on with the olive farm in business. So we were looking for something, and she gave us the opportunity to look at this over a long period of time. And we eventually made the decision that we wanted to do it. And so we bought the olive farm in 2004 with a view that we'd eventually build a house here, and this would be kind of like our retirement place. But in between that, it'd be a weekender and that sort of stuff for our kids and things like that. So we embarked on I suppose you could sort of halfway, a bit of a tree change sort of thing, way back then.
So were you harvesting your olives then? When did that start with your olive farm?
We got back from a holiday in Europe after we settled the contract and had to harvest the next week. So we had no idea what we were doing. But family, friends came to the party, and we all picked the fruit that was here in weather conditions that were horrific. The rain was coming horizontal, and I think that was the first year we had lots of family and friends help, and the last year.
Welcome to the agricultural industry, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
How many trees did you have, Steve, in those days?
The farm is called Mount Morick Olives, and had 1,500 trees, and they're all very little then, so you could drive between the trees and down the rows and all that sort of stuff. And so picking the fruit by hand wasn't a big chore, but it was obvious as the trees were going to get bigger and they were growing fast that it was not a sustainable thing to pick it by hand. And given my background, I thought there's got to be a better way of doing it than just picking by hand. So we set about mechanising the process, structuring the trees so that we could do that.
So is that? I've seen videos of Italian, I think, olive where they put a big net around the base of the tree and shake the tree. Is that how it works?
It's partly like that. We don't lay the net on the ground. And what the technology, if the tree is shaped the correct way and has a single trunk and enough clearance, these machines now have umbrellas underneath them.
Okay.
So you grab the tree with a shaker head and you unfurl a 7-metre umbrella, and that catches the olives.
Wow.
You don't really want the olives to get on the dirt because it can affect quality.
Well, then you've got to pick them up too.
Yeah, that was the other thing. It was semi-automatic in that scenario. But surprisingly, even up until a few years ago, there were still groves operating something similar to that. They lay out nets and they use mechanical clappers on pole saw type things, and they flip the olives down onto the nets and they hand pick it all up from the ground and whatever. It's more efficient than literally picking an olive off a tree, but still quite manually intensive.
Sorry, Steve. The automated process. Do you get 95% of the fruit off the tree?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. Every time you look at the tree after you're shaking, you think, did we get as much as what we should? But it varies by season, by variety, by weather conditions. If we get 95%, we're doing very well. We typically probably get between 85 and 90. A lot comes down to how the trees are pruned.
Yep.
If you have a tree that's very pendulous, very long, wispy branches, they won't shake very well. You want a stiff tree, and that way the vibration through the tree goes all the way to the tip, and it breaks the stalk that the olive hangs on by. But if you've got a long branch, thin shoot, then by the time that vibration gets to the tip, it's just stands still.
And is it mainly ripe fruit that fall, and therefore what's left behind is not quite ready, or?
The olives on the tree don't ripen at the same time, so the riper the olive, generally the more easy it comes off.
Yep.
But again, the weather condition, if it rains prior to harvesting, then water is drawn up into the stalk, and it makes it supple, so it doesn't. It's not brittle enough, and often doesn't break.
Won't break.
It's a bit like shearing sheep, Steve, isn't it? Gosh,
Yeah.
Don't want to shear sheep. Now, I just want to jump forward a few years and then come back to your journey from that. Because in Mark, I don't know if you know this, but in 2023 at the Australian International Olive Oil Awards, Geelong Regional Olives won Best in Show, Best in Southern Hemisphere, Best in Australia, Best in Victoria, Best Greek Varietal, and some other one which I don't understand. And we also won 5 golds, 4 silvers and 2 bronze. Now, Steve, that's a long journey from what you just described to last year.
Yeah.
And a very successful one by the sounds of it.
Yeah, well, we're building on it every year. I've always had the belief that this region is almost the perfect region for growing olives. We've got a diverse climate in 4 different areas, 4 or 5 different areas. Close to the coast, so conditions are relatively moderate, but then different soil types and things like that, and kind of suits, I suppose, the Australian Mediterranean, as opposed to up on the Murray, which is very dry and through those areas, and New South Wales is cooler and can also be a bit more humid as well. So, but this region, I know from my own grove here, was producing great quality oil early on, and now that we've got the other groves, we can see the variances across the region and can exploit them.
So Steve, Steve. So with you getting into olives, you obviously knew nothing about olives till you bought the grove.
Yeah.
How have you learned? What's been your very steep learning curve, I would suggest?
Yeah, and still learning. Look, in the early days, I engaged consultants through Modern Olives. Modern Olives is a Geelong company. It's part of the Banbury Ben Cobham group.
Yep.
And they were wonderful. They were largely instrumental in pretty much all the olive groves in this region, helping establish them and things like that. They sold the trees and stuff, but they ran a consulting business on the side, and they helped a lot. A lot of reading.
Yep.
In the early days of this industry, there's a lot of collaboration with other growers. Because from 98 thereabouts through to about 2002, 2004 was kind of a heyday of all the plantings down this way, and because there's pretty much about 50 groves, and so we had an association, and I was actively involved in that, and we're all learning. So
interesting.
How many trees totally in the region then?
I officially say about 80,000 is what I can physically put my hands on. I believe there's probably more than 100,000.
That's right. And as you just alluded to, a lot of them are just small holdings. And of course, there's no efficiencies and productivity, and everyone's got to try and get their grapes pressed, etc., etc. And I recall when I first met you, this was sort of, it must have been probably in the early days of really trying to get, I guess, I shouldn't say herding sheep, but you were trying to get some consensus with all the smaller growers and find a way to get together and work together so that you could produce a product economically and with quality control and everything else. And it sounds like now that you've actually achieved that.
Yeah, we had lots of conversations about cooperatives and different ways of working, more resources in our region who would invest in different equipment, and we could work it together. But pretty much by 2015, everyone had come to the conclusion it's all just too hard. We'll just hang the boots up and maybe we'll go out with family, friends, pick a few olives, get them processed and have a little bit of oil. That was pretty much how the situation was in 2015. And but I knew everyone, and I had the same problem. I decided I wanted to get bigger as opposed to get out of the game. And the logic was, well, I'll take it over. I'll lease their trees and consolidate all the capital investment into one entity, build the resources and skills up, and then go and take over each of these groves, maintain them for the property owners, and make available the oil from their groves back to them, not in full, but to a certain volume. And so that took off very quickly.
That's good. And have you got that processing plant up and running now, obviously?
No, that's our next strategic investment.
Plan
we've
B.
got all the harvesting and all the logistics worked out. We've got all the capital we need for that, trucks, trailers, you name it. At the moment, there is no processing plant in the region that's big enough to handle what we need. There's a couple of tiny little ones around, and there's a couple of mothballed ones. We're taking our fruit either up to Kilmore or Shepparton at the moment, but we don't want to do that much longer.
Am I right in saying that you've got a very short time frame from when you pick to when you crush?
Yeah, the fewer number of hours, the better.
Yeah.
We get it done within 24 hours. We'd love to get that down to just a few hours, but we can't do that without the plant locally.
Yeah.
And
when do you see that happening, Steve?
Well, I'm hoping in planning for it now.
Yep.
I'm hoping within 2 years. So one of the issues with a big plant is you need to have guaranteed volumes of fruit to make it justifiable. So we've been focused on building the production up to a viable amount that will make that plant, or to an amount that will make that plant viable.
Yep.
And we're pretty close to that now. Our most recent season was a disaster, but the one before that we did 250 tonnes of fruit.
Wow.
We need to sustain that. Ideally, get it up over 500 tonnes. This region has capacity for over 1,500, closer to 2,000 tonnes of fruit.
Wow.
And about 300,000 litres of oil. I'm the biggest producer now in the region. There are very few others. And we're doing around 30 to 35,000 litres. So we're still only about 10% of where we want to get to. And you can see, therefore, we need a processing plant locally. We couldn't possibly truck all that fruit up to those other locations.
So where does Boundary Bend do their stuff? Is that...
Yeah, Boundary Bend has got 3 sites, one at Boundary Bend, one at Cobram, and one at Boort.
Yep.
They've got huge mills, massive investment. They store their oil on farm in most of those cases, and then they also bring a lot of it back to North Geelong.
Yep.
And so they've got multiple sites where they do their packaging and distribution. So very smart organisation, very capable people.
Yep.
And Steve, I hear they're very helpful to people like you and give a lot back.
Yeah, we wouldn't exist if not for them. At the same time, they want us. I mean, I know them very well. They say that what you're doing, Steve, is what we do in the US.
Interesting.
As their startup strategy for the US, they're making a big push in the US, and they'll have their own groves and everything. They've pretty already got it now. But that's where their massive amount of investment is going now. But in terms of the logistics of harvesting and processing, they can't really help me.
Yep.
But I value their contribution in other ways, that's for sure.
That's good. Steve, how long can you store oil for?
Yeah, if stored properly in stainless steel vats in temperature-controlled rooms without light, oil should stay in good condition for a couple of years, 2 years.
Oh, right. I never realised that.
No, I didn't realise that.
Yeah, it depends a bit on the varieties.
Yeah.
Softer varieties might not last that long, but the varieties we've got in this region, I've had my oil retested after 2 years, just for interest, and the labs give back another 12 months. So the Australian standard for extra virgin olive oil is quite tight. We have our oils tested on 3 dimensions, and we have to choose it gives us a number of months. We have to choose the lowest figure.
Yep.
And then if it's more than 24 months, we have to quote 24 months maximum.
Okay.
Well, Steve, one thing is not allowed to happen in this house, because we're recording from my home at the moment, is you're not allowed to have any imported olive oil in the house. Right. Sometimes a mistake is made,
Yeah, yeah,
and they hear from me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, most of the cheaper brands in the supermarket aren't very good quality, and they're always at least 6 months old anyway.
Yep.
If you buy oil that's on comparable price to Cobram, that's usually okay. The Australian standard forced the importers to lift their quality standards. So it has improved in the last 10 years.
There was a fair bit of news coverage at one stage about oil substitution going on in some of the, is it in Spain, in sort of the virgin olive oil wasn't virgin olive oil at the end of the day.
Yeah, it was a blend of vegetable seed oils and God knows, maybe engine oil, I don't know. That's not as bad as it used to be. But with the supply shortage that exists globally as well as locally, wouldn't surprise me if we start seeing a bit more of that again.
Yeah, and Steve, I've noticed I often, every now and again, run into you at an open market, and you've been very persistent, and you've been at it for a little while, and it's great to hear that things are coming together.
Yeah, I kind of think just in the last 6 months, our visibility as Geelong Region Olives has taken a step up. The Small Business Festival launch was wonderful, but just different things have happened, and they say it takes 7 years for a business to become viable and sustainable. We're getting pretty close, and we've established a good reputation with the local restaurants. Because our value proposition is the chefs can come here and taste 20 or more different oils and choose what they like. We've got all these different oils under one roof from different locations, and that's a unique proposition, and the chefs love it, especially the chefs that are into local and quality. So we've got chefs on the Bellarine who are interested in the oils we produce from there, those on the Surf Coast, down this way, keen to get oils from around here, and we can do it. So not too many other olive producers can do that.
So Steve, have you signed up all the olive groves around the area, or are there still some that are still sitting there on their own?
There's still plenty out there doing nothing, just dormant. So we've got 12 regular groves we are responsible for, and about 20,000 trees. There are about 50 odd groves and about, I'd say, about 100,000 trees. So we've got a long way to go. We want to get about 60,000 odd trees from the existing plantings, and then from that becomes a basis for a significant expansion down the track.
And what's the reluctance to join up then? What stops people doing it?
Me. I actually say to them, look, I can't help you at the moment. I've just got too much. We haven't got enough capacity to take it all on at once.
Yep.
Mostly it comes down to cash flow and working capital.
Yep.
To take on each new grove is usually, depending on the condition of them, could be 6 months on our knees with chainsaws, pruning trees to get them into a shape that we can actually shake. And then it badly impact the productivity for the next year or two, and then you get a return. So I can't take on another 40,000 trees at the moment, given that commitment.
And
hence the processing plant's really important then as part of this.
Yeah.
And Steve, how long can a tree remain dormant?
Look, the olive tree can be left to go wild, and it'll just. Not a very well-known fact here is an olive tree is not a tree; it's actually a shrub. Right. So that
sorry, I'll rephrase that.
Don't worry, I get it around the wrong way too. But what the tree will do in its natural state is just keep shooting new trunks.
Oh, yeah.
And so you'll get a tree. An olive tree, therefore, will continually renew itself forever. Wow. So there are trees that are 3,000 years old.
Still producing olives?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it's it's like a new tree. It's
Yep.
attached, and the trunks just wrap around each other and cuddle each other, and they're amazing.
Bit like
fact,
a gnarly old grapevine.
Yeah, absolutely, but
Yeah.
a hell of a lot bigger. In fact, I've found out recently we've got some olive trees in our region which are nearly 200 years old.
Goodness.
Wow.
So, and I had a look at those not too long ago, and you almost don't want to touch them.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they're going fine. Beautiful, majestic trees. But yeah, so an olive tree, if ignored, will just revert to that condition. If it goes too far, it'll become unviable to clean it up, to take it over for shaking. So we took over grow this year, just a few months ago, and had to cut 8 trunks off pretty much every tree to leave 1 trunk.
Yep.
But the good thing is there was fruit left on that tree, and we were able to harvest a bit of it. So, but those trees will be.
So, Steve, where can people buy Geelong Regional Olives? Is it sold under that brand? Is it sold?
We sell by the province. We focus on the province. So what you'll find is there's Mount Morick olives, Barwon River olives, Bundara View olives. What have I got? Belbray olives.
So all the areas where you've got the trees. Okay.
Generally, yes. Most of our focus, as I said, have been on restaurants. This year is our focus on the consumer products. We sell online through the Geelong Region Olives website, where we promote the individual products.
Yep. And you can buy through there, order through there?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And so the retail sales at the moment are mostly focused around the Surf Coast area, Freshwater Creek down at Anglesey, a couple of places like that. But that'll change rapidly. We're about to launch an online program to promote our products and build a bit more brand awareness in the different areas around here. So,
and the different areas are obviously different olives. So what's the difference between the groves and the olives and taste or flavour and so on? Without going into huge detail, but
well, it's funny, it's extremely complex, and different varieties are performing better in different areas. For instance, the most common variety grown around here is Frantoio, and Frantoio on the Bellarine is different to here in the Surf Coast and also over in Golden Plains. The Bellarine, this is just me anecdotally, I think the oils are a little bit more spicier. The Frantoio is a bit more spicy than here in Surf Coast. These are a little bit softer here, and in Golden Plains, I'd say they've got a little bit of a hint of bitterness in there, but it's far too early to profile it. Because soil and weather conditions and altitude, time of harvesting has a big bearing. That's why I put as many of my oils into the Australian International Oil Show, partly for the recognition, but the judges are the best in the world, in my mind. That competition, they send our oils to 5 countries around the world, to panels of judges to be evaluated along with our own, and then the results are collated back here, and that's how we get our results. To me, it's the most professional competition I've heard of, but it means I get a really good and criteria for the judges is they have to write a detailed description of the oils. Most competitions you just get a score and that's it. But the Australian International Olive Awards are very, very good.
So it must make you very proud then to win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's why I'm reading off your LinkedIn site. Those accolades I read out in the beginning.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, look, the joke, it's not really a joke, to be honest. I said to the president of the Australian Olive Association, I want to take all the trophies one season because I can, because in theory, because I've got all different brands and different products. Well, last year I spent the time going up and down off stage. Got a lot of comments later on from different people saying that was impressive, and it's different. It's why they want me to talk at the conference again this year about the business model and the approach. as a potential way for the boutique industry to actually move forward and be viable.
Steve, that's an example of you having a dream, putting it into action, and the part of the reward was that show. That's how I see it.
Yeah, well, I kind of took it that way. I didn't want to get too excited. But
we'll get excited
for
you.
All right.
Yeah. Well, we submitted our oils this year. We didn't have so many to submit, but some interesting oils as well. So interested to see what the results are this season. But I'm gearing up for next season because we'll have a lot of oil next season from a lot of different places around the region. We had a poor crop this year, so we didn't get much diversity. But the crop next season, subject to weather, will probably present the best of all the varieties we've got. And I'm looking forward to that one if I can make it through to that. We might be able to take a few more trophies.
So, Steve, thank you for chatting with us. I'm going to say you're still probably one of the best secrets around Barwon South West, if we can drag you into that sort of enclave, because a brilliant story, and you've got to be commended for your foresight and your passion for what you're doing. And I'm going to make a point of looking for the oils, and I'll hop on the website and have a look, because I think you've done a brilliant job. So well done, fantastic.
Yeah, Steve, thanks for agreeing for us to interview you. We caught up with you at that show the other night at the pier in Geelong, and I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys.
Okay,
have a good day, Steve.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.